Welcome to Belize. Belize is a relatively small nation on the eastern coast of Central America, with the shorelines of the Caribbean Sea to the east, as it is bordered to the south and west by Guatemala and to the north by Mexico.
According to the 2010 Housing and Population Census, this multicultural nation is home to over 300,000 inhabitants. However, 43%, or almost half of its population, live in poverty, according to the Statistical Institute of Belize.
The question is, are these Belizeans responsible for their poverty, or is someone, or better yet, some social phenomenon to blame?
While poverty exists rampantly on Belize City's south side, it is also evident on the north side. In the Fort George constituency, especially Majestic Alley, it is seen vividly.
Mr. Henry, how much percent of people in Majestic Alley would you say live in poverty?
So basically like 95 or 98% of everybody also. I'd say everybody also, they're in a poverty already, because if you look wrong and you see what already going wrong also, that everybody, nobody they higher than nobody already, since everybody just at that one C level, because that's how the system set for this year as well. And the bigger people, they know how they want to balance off too, right?
Saeed Musa, the area representative of Fort George since the 1970s, attributes this poverty to the breakdown of social structures, social values, and changes in the society's norms.
For you, what do you attribute to this poverty in Majestic Alley?
Okay, well, I think we need to go back to a little bit of history, how it was then, way back in the 70s. It was just some old little wooden houses, mostly rotten houses. But it was clean, and the people were happy.
According to Musa, the initial norms in Majestic Alley were abandoned.
Holding now. When in the old days now, with the Manassa days and Chicken Young days, those are the people that the young people used to look up to. They had father figures they could look up to. But as time went on, the society structure deteriorated as well, which contributed to poverty. Because you had many women having children, young women too, some of them teenagers, and no man to mind the children or to contribute to the home, because as they have children, the man they move out and they not keep up to their responsibility. But it's another story all by itself. It's not unique to Belize.
According to the functionalist theory, society is a system of interconnected parts that work together in harmony to maintain a state of balance. However, as it relates to poverty, attorney at law Karim Musa attributes it to the dysfunction of social institutions such as the education and family.
At the root of poverty and at the root of crime, in my opinion, is the access to quality and affordable education. I think that is the starting point that we have to look at. Families who don't have the stresses of taking their children from nursery, preschool, all the way to university, you would find that if they don't have that stress, they won't be in this cycle of poverty that we're seeing in this country. And that is why I have always advocated for, and I know many other politicians have advocated for, free education all the way to university. I think that would solve a lot of our problems. It is not students graduating from university and graduating from sixth form that you see committing murders and committing robberies and that sort of thing. And so when you solve the educational crisis that we are faced as a nation, you solve a lot of other issues. One, it affords individuals, after getting their degree, to get a dignified job, a job that they can earn a living wage, that they can take care of their families and sustain their families. And so, if you ask me, at the root of it is, of course, education. There are many other factors, including the fact that we don't have an efficient social service department that can go into the households. Many of our children these days, as you know, are growing up without any father figures in their households, and many times that results in children losing focus on what is important. And of course, there's a lot of negativity, let's be real, in households. A lot of hostility these days we find in households. And so all of that can contribute to an individual losing focus, and that focus being, of course, on their education, and eventually leading to seeking out employment after gaining a very good quality education.
This breakdown of social institutions is echoed by former Prime Minister Said Musa.
Once the family structure is weak, you will have poverty. The other thing that I feel about, and going back to Majestic Alley, or Pink's Alley as I call it now, so even though we improved significantly the shelter situation, housing, it was difficult to make sure we provided every child with a good education, because that is key to fighting poverty. Education, you can't get around it, because without education you can't get a good job. Without education, you're not to think straight, you're not to think logical, you resort to very visceral feelings as opposed to using your brain and using logic, cerebral issues.
While social dysfunction is attributed to poverty, social inequality between groups or classes is also a cause of poverty, according to German philosopher Karl Marx.
As part of poverty too, and I'm going from one thing to the next, is the inequality in the society. Inequality means that a few people have all the wealth and the vast majority have none or little. That inequality is a damning thing for any society to move forward. Not only because you leave a vast majority of people living in misery and poverty, but also because the country cannot move forward. Because there's resentment, there's violence, there's crime.
This inequality is understood even by the common man in society.
Sir, are people responsible for their poverty?
Well, in my view, no 100%. But that's what the people, that's what the government and those people want you to believe, that we're responsible for our struggle. But look at the bigger picture. If you was in full control of your situation, would you struggle? So the real blame to me is them. They're trying to make us believe that the struggle is on us, but they're to blame, 100%.
But why are you not in control?
The only thing I'm in control of basically is working, and I'm being underpaid, so I wish I was in control and I'd make that situation a little easier,
So you're saying the people with power, they are responsible for your poverty?
Yeah, the people with the money and the power, because they can change the situation, but they refuse to. They see what's going on. It's just like me, I'm a smaller fish. I can see clear what's going on, the advantage that's being taken of the local and the lower class, which is the poorer class, which is us. If I had the power, man, I'd do it, but I don't have the money, I have the mouth.
Miss Gilly, are people responsible for their own poverty?
No, we are not responsible for our own poverty.
So who is responsible?
I think the bigger class of people are responsible.
What do you mean by bigger class?
Well, the rich, the government, they are responsible. Because if we can do it much better, we will do much better. They have us in this poverty here that we are going through right now.
But what did they do to get you in this poverty?
Well, they know what they're doing. So they can help us and they can do better. But I think they choose to not do better to support we poor people and stuff like that. Think about it.
But what if these same people that you're accusing of being responsible, what if they say that you are responsible, you had an opportunity to go to school, you had an opportunity to take the straight and narrow. How do you respond to that?
Well, not everybody have a opportunity to get a job. Right now, I don't have a job. I went and tried to get a job, but because of this bullshit with red and blue and all that bullshit, I can't even get a job, and I have 9 children and I can't get a job. So I think they're responsible for it.
So you believe they're playing politics with your life?
That's right, there is.
So you're a PUP and a UDP government is in. Tell us more about this
And
dynamics.
I am a PUP, and I think both parties should work because both of us want to live and eat. And since when the red comes in, I can't even get a job, and I have 9 children.
According to Karim Musa, this inequality creates a vicious cycle of poverty that is inescapable.
I believe that many instances we are victims of our circumstances. I believe that children who grow up in a poor household are likely, it's very much more difficult for them to get out of it because, like I said, there's a cycle. And so I would say that they're victims. They're born as victims into this world, that there are no opportunities for them. So I would never cast blame on them to say that it is their fault. But no doubt they live and they grow up in a surrounding that is a cycle, and it is a vicious cycle. And so in my opinion, you can't really fault them. It is these entire institutions, like you rightly said, they are failing the Belizean people. And those institutions need to pick up the slack.
According to anthropologist Oscar Lewis, the culture of poverty is a concept in social theory that asserts that the values of people experiencing poverty plays a significant role in perpetuating their impoverished condition.
So they have to continue to go back to politicians to beg and beg and beg, and they don't have an independent mind because all they know is to go to these politicians to ask for something, to ask for groceries, to ask for money. Whereas if you get a quality education and you graduate from sixth form, you don't need a politician. And I've always said it's a big conspiracy because politicians want to keep people dependent. That is just the system that they have created. They want to keep you coming back and asking for money over and over and over again.
Nelson Henry explains how this poverty is perpetuated.
You hear this now, when you do the crime, you don't in a poverty. You have to find money for liar. You have to find money for feed up. Once you go to jail, who has sufficed your picnic, so that more poverty we put for yourself in.
But why you have to do the crime?
Why you have to do the crime? Because then that's the only way out. So we could try make something happen. You get the sense? We try make something happen.
People smoking weed. There's a culture in Majestic Alley. And I want to believe that this culture perpetuates the poverty that exists. How do you respond?
I will have to agree with you that it does. That is why I was talking about a vicious cycle. That's the corrosive effect of poverty. Those guys that not think, that just hanging around and hustling, so to speak, and if I get a little bit of money, go by the Chinese shop, go buy a couple of beers, and and just start drinking. That's a cul-de-sac, man. That's going nowhere in a hurry.
Although the administration of Prime Minister Musa had provided housing to these residents of Majestic Alley, it was refused.
In our case now, Mahogany Heights is what, 35, 40 miles from Belize City. And like hell we couldn't get our people for providing with a house, with a yard, space for the children to grow, and then we were building a school, everything, facility. But very few of them took it up.
While the functionalist and social conflict theories might explain the causes of poverty, the debate continues as to whether social institutions, inequality, or simply individuals are responsible for their poverty.
We believe that Belizeans are not responsible for their poverty.
Poverty is the lack of resources. All interviewees demonstrated good knowledge of what poverty is and their outlook of what are the major causes and effects of poverty. Not to mention, Mr. Said Musa and Karim Musa both gave an in-depth view of what poverty is, causes of poverty, and possible solutions to help alleviate poverty. Karl Marx's theory was based on inequality. I also concurred with Mr. Karim and Mr. Elwin that inequality is a part of the reason why poverty exists. Where people start off in life continues to have an influence on where they are likely to end up in life. Beginning life in poverty for some means that they are at higher risk of remaining in poverty for the rest of their lives.
As the late great Nelson Mandela quotes, poverty is not an accident. Like slavery and apartheid, it is man-made and can be removed by the actions of human beings. Like Said Musa stated in the interviews that they provided housing for some residents in the Majestic Alley area, and it was hard for them to move from the city. And that was a perfect example that we actually choose our own destiny to live in poverty or not. But both Karim and Said Musa stated some valid points on one of Marx's theories about poverty, and that is based on social inequality. Inequality, like when we don't treat people equally or give people the equal opportunity based on their merits, then we create poverty. Mr. Nelson also touched on some geography because where a person is raised will determine their economic base and economic opportunities. So he said that they do what they have to do to make ends meet. And so, with these facts about the lack of education opportunities and social location and inequality, we now know that Belizeans aren't really responsible for their own poverty.
Poverty has always been an issue in Belize City, especially in the Majestic Alley. There are a number of issues related to poverty within a society. For example, the social location, the way they were raised determine their economic base and economic opportunities. Getting ahead has a lot to do with who you know, but if the people you need to know to get ahead are in the higher class but you are from Majestic Alley, then you are more than likely to remain in poverty. The location might also limit educational opportunities, which could help them escape poverty. Another example would be their profiling. These people from Majestic Alley are seen as danger to society. Those with high police contact are less likely to be economically viable, so they are more than likely to be stuck in poverty.
Majestic Alley is located in the north side of Belize City, where people have this perception that people living in the north side have a better quality of life than people living in the south side. One of our interviewers, Ms. Jilly, brought out the social conflict theory, where she talks about the inequalities that she faced trying to find a job. When she gives up on trying to find a job, she and others trying to live and survive create a counterculture whereby they most likely involve themselves in criminal activities. Yasser Musa brought out the functionalist theory, where he spoke about how social institutions have failed us Belizeans. And due to this, people who cannot afford a good quality education will continue to live in poverty because they will not be able to have the opportunity to uplift themselves. Good night, my name is Kamara Card. I am doing a video analysis of the final video presentation submitted by the Socialist Group. Our question was, is Belizean responsible for their poverty? Our stance as a group is no, Belizeans are not responsible for their poverty. I determine two categories of poverty from what I've read and what I've learned is that the United Nations classifies abject poverty as anyone living below $5 Belize or $2.50 US per day. However, the Red Cross determines poverty based on anyone living without adequate housing or shelter and food, and that's called situational poverty, and usually associated to the region such as ours, which is ridden by natural disasters. I prefer the latter when it comes to Belize because there's never been an incident in Belize where someone has starved or have died from starvation or the lack of food in Belize. What was determined from the interviews that we did was that it's evident that situational poverty is what we've experienced. The guys from Through the Majestic Alley continuously alluded to the fact that they did not have adequate housing, that they had to hustle for food. The ex-Prime Minister Said Musa also alluded to the fact that the people have always been poor but were more welcoming to being poor, that he specifically stated that they were happy, they had less but they were happy. Karim Musa, he believed that generation after generation passed down the continuously passed down the same lifestyle, and so it was just the situation that they were caught up in. All this was a reflection of it could be summarized or an explanation or an example of the Karl Marx theory, where classes causes conflict, classes causes poverty, which resulted in conflict. The upper class, the bourgeoisie, created their own wealth, and the proletariats remained poor continuously or endlessly because they were just given enough to survive. The bourgeoisie kept them working and making money for them, kept them poor, and the gap between the two classes could never be closed because the rich kept getting rich and the poor kept getting poorer. Also, as the Marx theory continues to explain, that it is from capitalism where the government at hand continues to keep the poor people poor by not providing proper institutions that would make them elevate themselves. We experience this on a daily basis in Belize, and therefore I agree with all the interviewees when they say that Belizeans are poor because of capitalism and not because of their own doing. Thank you.
This film was loaded with sociological content. The three that stood out to me are the cultural changes, the social conflict theory, and the functionalist theory. As it relates to culture, Said Musa spoke about changes in the culture of the people of Majestic Island. He noted that previously, when a man impregnated a woman in Majestic Island, that man would stay and fulfill his role as a father. However, over the course of history, that began to change. Men fathered children and moved on. They did not stay and fulfill their roles. The second area that I want to focus on is the social conflict theory. As we know, this is a conflict between groups in society for access to resources. This is a competition for resources. That came to life inside Musa's explanation of social inequality. It was also illustrated by Ms. Gillett, who indicated that because she is a People's United Party supporter and the government is a United Democratic Party-led government, her opportunities for employment have dramatically dwindled just because of her political preference. I think that perfectly highlights Karl Marx's view of the social conflict theory. I think the interview with Mr. Moreira was the icing on the cake when he explained that if we were responsible for our own poverty, we would change it. But obviously we're not responsible. And I like how he attributed it to governments and to those leaders in society. I think that was excellent. In terms of the functionalist theory, Kari Musa brought that to life. He spoke about the purpose and the interconnectedness of the social structures, for example, the education system and the family. However, he pointed to the dysfunction that actually emerges and contributes to poverty. So those are the three areas that stood out to me when we conducted this film, trying to understand or trying to rationalize who is responsible for the poverty that Belizeans face.
Wago chidongi yo gamba pa iwo malali.